Well, after 3 months of waiting, we finally got a new episode of Rick and Morty. While it may not be as insane or as in-depth as the last 2 episodes, it did not disappoint. Chock full of references and Easter eggs, this is a strong start to a season for sure. So without further ado, let's dive right into all the crazy stuff in Rickmancing the Stone. First of all, the episode's title is a reference to the movie Romancing the Stone, just with the usual insertion of Rick's name. Although the plots are not at all similar, throughout the episode Rick is trying to get their glowing stone, or isotope. Reddit user Adium pointed out that isotope 322 is actually a real theorized element. It just shows how in-depth this show is and how much research goes into it. Also, real quick, I'm gonna point something interesting out about the opening scene with Jerry in the garage. At the very end of episode 1, Jerry is actually about to kick Rick out of the house and put him in an old folks home. Now, in season 3, Jerry is the one being thrown out of the house, thanks to Rick. In the exact same moving truck, too. This shows how the series has come full circle since the beginning. Rick has completely won against Jerry and took over the household. Jerry went from about to kick him out to being the one being kicked out. It's kinda sad to see how he fell. Another thing in the show that really shows continuity is that the crack around the house that was put there in the season 1 finale is still there. It's been there since that episode, actually. This shows how much thought and continuity actually goes into Rick and Morty, and how little details like this have shown how much things have changed since the beginning. We're still in the same universe, these are the same characters we've had since the start, and this is how crazy it's gotten. That crack is there to kind of prove and show all that. The Smith family has been through a lot together, and it's only gonna get crazier from here. We get to see the new theme song this episode also, which we've already seen, but it's still pretty great. If you want to see a breakdown of the new theme song, check out the one that the Roundtable did right here. Shameless plug. Okay, so let's talk about the bulk of the episode that takes place in the post-apocalyptic dimension. The whole thing is a giant parody of the Mad Max franchise, with giant post-apocalyptic cars and vehicles, a desolate nuclear desert, and overall just looking like Mad Max in style and appearance. Super self-aware references like when Rick calls the Blood Dome the Thunder Dome to show that he's self-aware and knows exactly what's happening, because in the original Mad Max, it was called the Thunderdome. The cast and crew who designed the characters for this episode described the whole look of the characters as 90s punk with the BDSM factor played up, and that definitely shows, especially in the characters who wear leashes and all sorts of good kinky stuff like that. A fun little continuity thing to point out is that the gun that Rick is working on and grabs in the opening scene is the same one that he uses later throughout the episode. Little things like this are fun to notice, and you would miss them if you weren't looking. But again, it shows how much work goes into the show, down to the tiny details like this. The scene where Summer kills the mutant bandit is the same scene we saw in the trailer, so now we know the context. Just want to point out that he has a literal baby as like a clothing accessory. That's a little more than messed up. Moving on to later in the episode, Rick needs to distract everyone, so he throws Morty into the Blood Dome to fight. Originally, Morty says a line about distracting him with a puppet show, to which Rick replies,
"Right idea, wrong genre, Morty."
I'm not sure if this is a reference to anything, but it seems like it is. If anyone knows what this is a reference to, please let us know down in the comments. In order to give Morty a fair shot, he uses the muscle memory of a dead arm they find. However, the arm ends up having a mind of its own and represents the past person that it belonged to. Morty can't control the arm, and it ends up using Morty to finish the unfinished business that the person had. This is actually called Evil Hand and is a pretty common TV trope. It's when a character gets a new limb or something along those lines that ends up taking control or doing things independent of the host. We've seen this before in cartoons like Ben 10 and even in an episode of Star vs. the Forces of Evil, in the episode where Star uses her magic on Marco's arm and it ends up getting a mind of its own. So this is Rick and Morty's fun spin on it. There's a funny fourth wall break in the episode where Rick turns to the camera and says,
"Whoa, we'll be right back."
Rick and Morty is chock full of funny jokes like that, so this is fitting. There's a point in the episode where Rick attempts to leave the Mad Max dimension and replace Summer and Morty with robots, completely abandoning them. When addressed, the Morty robot responds in a very interesting way.
"Oh jeez, I'm so down with my parents' divorce, dog. Like, don't even trip. Like, in a healthy way."
He sounds and talks a lot like Morty's response to Scary Terry in the Reception episode.
"Hey yo, Scary T, don't even trip about your pants, dog. Here's a pair on us, fool."
I'm not sure if there's a reference, callback, or just a similar joke, but it's definitely worth pointing out. Back in our dimension, we see how Beth is handling the divorce. One thing to notice is that Beth is drinking wine. Now, we've seen this in the past, and the series heavily implies that Beth has a drinking problem. But it's important to note that Beth is seen drinking a lot in stressful situations. Like when she shoots Mr. Poopy Butthole and finds out that he's actually real, the first thing she does is run to the kitchen and pour a glass of wine. So her drinking is subtly showing that she's not holding up well after this divorce. She may seem fine at first and is super cold to Jerry, but she ends up breaking down and crying later. And the kids aren't doing any better. Throughout the episode, everything they do is just them trying to cope with the divorce. Like when Morty is fighting in the Blood Dome and he starts yelling about how Jerry acted in the garage. By the end of the episode, however, they all learn a little something about coping. Something to point out towards the end of the episode, when they use a stone to create the advanced society, the neighborhood suburbs they create look super similar and almost completely identical to their neighborhood back home. Also interesting is that the house they built is the same house that was shown in the bumpers in Rick and Morty promos. Towards the end of the episode, the Morty robot was about to shut down because their human counterparts were back. However, Morty becomes self-aware and goes on a huge speech about how he wants to be real and experience real things. This is like a sort of reference to any type of Pinocchio-esque tropes where a character wants to be real but is actually fake. It's just a little joke in the episode, but it's definitely a standout moment, and one of the funniest scenes. Finally, let's talk about the after credits scene. Jerry is out getting his mail when a wolf comes up to attack him. The wolf ends up taking his unemployment check, much to Jerry's dismay. But at the end, the same loser win that happened at the beginning happens again. However, because of the fact that it came back twice, and the voice is actually Rick's, it makes me wonder if there's something more. Maybe it's just a joke Rick's playing on him, or maybe it's all in Jerry's head. Either way, it's interesting to know. Well guys, that about wraps it up for this episode of Rick and Morty. For being a more one-off episode, there's a lot of references and Easter eggs that really make it more enjoyable. Needless to say, I'm not perfect. If there's anything I missed, or anything that you noticed that I didn't talk about, then let us know down in the comments below. I'm Retro Nemo for the Roundtable, signing off.
This video has been powered by Patreon. If you want to give us some more support, head to patreon.com/roundtablevids, become a patron, and get some awesome perks. Thanks for watching another video on the Roundtable. If you want to get more involved with our community and watch videos from Let's Talk with Tom, Voxbox, and more, click the video right here. Or if you want to get some more of the animation goodness, watch some Crystal Clear or Meeting Monday, click the video right here. And please, don't forget to subscribe.